Unfortunately, we see a tide of terror that is washing the streets of Israel. Everyone is a target. Men, women, children. When you board a bus, you are afraid to stay on the bus. And we see the stabbings, we see the throwing rocks, and we are worried about it.
Israeli Deputy Defense Minister Danny Danon on CNN earlier today expressing concern as Israel works to combat a surge in terrorism. Over the last month, Israelis have been targeted by a wave of Palestinian attacks. Thus far, 7 Israelis and 32 Palestinians have died. For more, we welcome back to the program retired Master Sergeant Scot Neil. He's an Afghanistan and Iraq veteran. He joins us from Tampa. Also joining us from Washington, D.C., former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz, who's also the Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs at the Center for Security Policy. Let me begin with you, Fred. Could these attacks be the start of a third intifada in Israel?
It could possibly be that, J.D., but let's be clear. These attacks represent 2 things. 1, that Hamas remains committed to the destruction of the State of Israel, and 2, cowardice. Hamas is afraid to attack Israel directly or to launch another assault with missiles, so it has resorted to this cowardly effort by encouraging knife attacks through social media. It simply goes to the heart of what Hamas really is.
Scott, Israel is asking all its licensed gun owners to carry weapons now. They want everybody on guard after these attacks. Will this serve as a deterrent? Because we've seen this feverish rise, as Fred mentioned, via social media.
I don't know if it's as much as a deterrent as a positive action Israelis can take on their own, because there's something up close and personal with the knife attacks and the cleaver attacks that really strike a different level of fear in a person. But by having your own guns or knowing your citizens are armed, you're going to have a lot more calmer sense of going about your day.
You know, it's very curious to see the conduct of this administration. They've directed our State Department to try and strike a balance, saying it's concerned Israeli police are using excessive force on Palestinians. But obviously, we've seen the reports, we've heard the calls from Palestinian leaders to have young people commit these attacks on Israelis. Fred, does the Obama administration just take Israel for granted?
I don't think we've ever had a U.S. administration this hostile to the State of Israel. And the statements by this administration that seem to strike a moral equivalence between the terrorism being conducted by Hamas and efforts by the Israelis to defend themselves, it's just appalling. And I think Jewish Americans throughout this country should hold Democrats accountable for the way the Obama administration has been acting.
Scott, you have any rationale for why the president and his administration just seems to set up this false equivalency?
Well, I really don't understand where this act of appeasement, comes from, where we always deny Israel's right to defend itself. And as a government, they come in and they try to influence Israel by, not making them feel they need to take the right measures to secure themselves. And yet that emboldens the Palestinians, and they point to the legitimacy of America's message, and that, yes, they attack Israel at the same time.
Final 2 minutes, let's turn to Benghazi, the select committee. It's now turned into a political football. Here's what my old colleague, Mac Thornberry of Texas, now Mac Thornberry is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Here's what he had to say.
The motivation for the creation of the committee was, one, we owe it to the people who died, and secondly, there are people serving in our embassies all around the world who need to be protected, and we need to learn the lessons to make sure there's not a repeat of Benghazi that affects them.
Fred, you're no stranger to committee intrigue on Capitol Hill. With all this political talk, are the reasons for the formation of the Benghazi Select Committee falling by the wayside?
4 Americans died, J.D., probably because of inadequate security, and there was a cover-up. The Obama administration lied about what happened in Benghazi so this tragedy would not interfere with the president's reelection. That's why the Democrats are so determined to discredit this committee and shut down this investigation. It's not going to get Mr. Obama in legal trouble, probably not Hillary Clinton, but the American people deserve an answer to what really happened here.
Scott, I know you spent your time on the ground as a warrior, but in terms of political warfare, Is the left just going on the attack so they don't have to explain things like that goofy video explanation and all the intrigue that surrounded the Benghazi attack? Got about 25 seconds.
Yeah, as a special counterterrorism expert, I saw what went on, and I had a lot of intel about, how it was handled on the back end as well. And there's just so many questions that are unanswered. And the American public deserves answers, so does the special forces who are ready to commit themselves in the next terrorism incident.
We will have to leave it there. Scot Neil in Tampa, Fred Fleitz in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, you have our thanks. Up next, does unlikable mean unelectable? Not necessarily. Unlikable author Ed Klein on Hillary Clinton, her political instincts, and what may be ahead. That's ahead on Newsmax Prime.